The containment vault on Station Heshmore had not been opened in 300 years. Dr. Cayley's Vare stood before the frost-rimed cylinder, his 4 eyes blinking in staggered sequence as he reviewed the readout floating beside it. The Valkyrie scientist had spent his entire career studying dead things, fossils, extinct predators, the bones of civilizations that had burned themselves out long before his people ever left their homeworld. But this specimen was different. This one was not dead. It had simply been waiting. Cryo Unit 7, Cayley's murmured, tapping the translucent panel. Human designation, Captain Darian Voss. Status, stable. Threat classification, he paused, reading the ancient annotation left by whoever had sealed this vault centuries ago. Threat classification, do not revive. He should have listened to that warning. He told himself that, later, more times than he could count. But the Valkyrie High Council had grown desperate. The Skarn Collective was 3 jumps away from Heshmore, their warfleets burning a path through what remained of Valkyrie border space, and the Council's analysts had calculated, with the cold mathematics of the dying, that they needed something the Skarn had never fought before. Something unpredictable. Something the historical archives politely referred to as an apex anomaly. Humanity had been extinct, as far as the wider galaxy knew, for 3 centuries. Their homeworld had gone dark during the long silence, swallowed by some catastrophe no alien historian had ever fully reconstructed. The few human specimens that remained were relics, soldiers frozen mid-campaign during a war so old that even the Valkyrie, who had fought alongside humans once, had only fragments of records left. Cayley's had read those fragments. He had read about the siege of Calder's Rift, where 400 human soldiers held a collapsing space station against 11,000 Skarn shock troops for 6 days without resupply. He had read about Operation Hollow Star, where a single human gunship had flown directly into a Skarn dreadnought's reactor core rather than let the ship reach a civilian colony. He had read the after-action reports, written by alien officers who had fought beside humans and walked away changed, quieter, more careful with their words, as if they'd witnessed something they didn't have language for. He had read all of it, and still, when the cylinder hissed open and the frost peeled back from a face that was disturbingly calm for a man waking after 300 years, Cayley's felt his hearts, both of them, skip a beat. Darian Voss opened his eyes. They were not panicked. They were not confused. They simply assessed. How long? Voss said. His voice was rough from disuse but steady. 312 years, Cayley's answered, because lying seemed both pointless and unwise. Voss absorbed this the way a man absorbs a change in weather. He flexed his fingers, rolled his shoulders, took inventory of a body that ached in ways frozen muscle shouldn't remember to ache. Humanity? Cayley's hesitated. This was the part the council had told him to soften, to delay, to manage. He decided, in that moment, that he was done managing things. We don't know, Cayley said honestly. Your homeworld went silent. No transmissions, no ships, nothing for 3 centuries. You may be among the last of your kind. He expected grief. He expected rage, denial, the kind of emotional collapse his species' own psychological models predicted for catastrophic loss. He had prepared sedatives. He had prepared a containment protocol. Instead, Voss exhaled slowly, sat up, and asked, "What do you need from me?" That, Cayley's would reflect later, was the first sign he had badly misjudged what he was dealing with. The Skarn assault came 9 days later, faster than the Council's analysts had predicted. Their fleet dropped out of slipspace in a formation built for annihilation, not conquest, not negotiation, just the systematic erasure of everything in front of them. Heshmore's defense grid, cobbled together from 3 generations of underfunded Valkyrie engineering, lit up the sky for 11 minutes before the first ring of orbital platforms went dark. Cayley's was in the command center when Voss walked in, wearing combat plating that the station's archives had kept preserved alongside him, a uniform from a war that had ended before the Valkyrie officers currently shouting orders had been born. "You shouldn't be here," said Commander Athrelsan, the station's ranking officer, her mandibles clicking in agitation. You're an unverified asset. 3 centuries out of date. You don't even know our tactical doctrine. You don't have a tactical doctrine, Voss said, looking at the holographic display where the Skarn formation was carving through Valkyrie pickets like they weren't there. You have a retreat plan that everyone's too proud to call a retreat plan. Sand's mandibles stopped clicking. Give me a fighter wing, Voss said. Whatever you've got left. I don't need it to be good. I need it to do exactly what I tell it, when I tell it. You have no authorization. Commander. Voss's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. In about 4 minutes, that Skarn vanguard is going to reach your reactor shielding, and when they do, this station and everyone on it stops being a tactical problem and becomes debris. I've fought wars, your historian's footnote is cautionary tales. Let me work. Kaylee's watched Sand's calculation play out across her features, pride warring with arithmetic winning. Wing 7 is yours, she said. Don't make me regret this. Wasn't planning to. What happened over the next 2 hours would be studied by Valkyrie military academies for the next century, though none of the analysis would ever fully capture what Kaylee's witnessed firsthand from the command center, his eyes, all 4 of them, fixed on the tactical display. Voss did not fight like the Valkyrie fought. He did not fight like the simulations, built on 300 years of cautious, attrition-minded doctrine, predicted anything could fight. He threw Wing 7's 12 outdated fighters into gaps the Skarn formation hadn't bothered to defend, because no rational commander would have flown there. He baited a Skarn cruiser into overextending past the station's debris field, then collapsed a damaged supply platform onto its engines with 3 precisely placed torpedoes. He used Heshmore's dying defense grid not as a shield but as a weapon, rerouting failing power conduits to overload exactly when Skarn boarding craft made contact, turning the station's own collapse into a trap. He was reckless in a way that looked, from the outside, indistinguishable from suicidal. And yet every choice, Kaylee's realized as he reviewed the data afterward, had been built on a foundation of brutal, exacting calculation, the kind of math that only made sense if you were entirely unafraid of the answer. By the time the Skarn vanguard broke off and actually retreated, something Valkyrie intelligence had never recorded a Skarn force doing, Heshmore had lost 4 platforms, 200 personnel, and 1 fighter. It should have lost everything. Afterward, in the wreckage-lit quiet of the command center, San approached Voss with an expression Kaylee's couldn't read on an alien face that wasn't built for human emotional grammar, but he understood it anyway. It was the look of someone recalculating everything they thought they knew about what was possible. The Council will want you contained again, she said quietly. Studied. Controlled. A weapon like you isn't supposed to exist outside a vault. Voss didn't look surprised. I know. And if you refuse? He considered the question with the same calm he'd shown waking up 3 centuries displaced from everything he'd ever known. I won't refuse the vault, he said. I'll refuse to let you waste me in it while there's still a war worth fighting. Lock me up after the Skarn are dealt with, if you still think that's wise. Until then, he glanced at the tactical display, at the scattered wreckage of a fleet that had thought itself unstoppable. Until then, I'm not something you control. I'm something you point. Kaylee stepped forward before he'd fully decided to speak. The warning on your cryo unit, he said. Do not revive. I assumed it meant you were dangerous to us. Voss's expression shifted, not quite a smile, but close. It does mean that. Then why? Because the people who sealed me up understood something your council hasn't figured out yet, Voss said, already turning toward the hangar, toward whatever came next. Dangerous and useful aren't opposites, Doctor. Sometimes they're the same word, said Twice. Kaylee stood alone in the command center long after Voss had gone, staring at the empty cryo unit's readout, still glowing faintly with its 300-year-old warning. He found himself, for the first time in his long career studying dead things, grateful that something had finally refused to stay buried.